Minutes to allow other people to log on. But welcome to our October Town Hall webinar. Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us. We should be getting started in just a couple of more minutes, just giving some of our colleagues a little extra time to join us. Thank you for being here today. Good, good afternoon, good morning,
It's 12 o'clock now. Thank you again, as Dr. Kimbrel has said, for joining us, sharing this time with us. Just as we have more people joining us, we just want to share some general housekeeping rules. Our webinar will start here in just the next 2 to 3 minutes. Any questions or comments that everyone has, please just direct them to the chat. There's also a Q&A option where you can ask questions anonymously if you choose to do so, and we will answer them at the end of the presentations. Just for any public comments, we ask that you use the large group option, and just remember the session is being recorded. Give it about 1 more minute to allow other people to hop on, and we'll get started. All right. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Our agenda for today is as follows. Our beloved Dr. Deanna Kimbrel, our Director and Chief Diversity Officer, will introduce our panelists, who are Jen Geiger from Acess VR and Bonnie Smith, who works at Monroe County's Office of Mental Health. They will both be doing presentations, and we will have room at the end of the presentations for questions. And again, you're welcome to chat in your questions, but we will wait until after the presentations are done to answer them and respond to them. And then we will go over some DEI updates and our Keep in Touch page. And I'll pass it along to Dr. Kimbrel.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you all for being here today. And I want to give a special thank you for our panelists and all those that are doing the work and working with those with disabilities, as well as in our mental health field as well. So again, thank you for your service. And on behalf of our county executive today, I would like to deliver the proclamation for National Disability Employment Awareness Month that we will be presenting to Acess VR. I know we are in a virtual world, but it is real. And we will make sure that Jennifer gets this on behalf of our county executive to Acess VR, just based on our great relationship and our ability through them to bring in more people with disabilities to work here at the county. So the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas during the month of October in Monroe County, we reaffirm our commitment to equal opportunity for our citizens by paying tribute to the hardworking Americans living with a disability who play a pivotal role in our economy. And whereas a concerted effort to educate the public on issues related to disability and employment began in 1945, when Congress passed the foundational law declaring the first week of October as National Employ the Physically Handicapped Week. As the title has changed over time and expanded from a week to a month, with the Congress now recognizing October as National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And whereas the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, was passed by the United States Congress in 1990, a foundational document that's passage expanded protections that today apply to more than 60 million disabled Americans. And whereas the theme of National Disability Employment Awareness Month this year is the Americans' Recovery Powered by Inclusion, reflecting the importance of access and opportunity to employment for people with disabilities as our community recovers from COVID-19. And whereas Monroe County remains committed to employing our residents living with a disability since January 2020. Monroe County has increased its contracts by 42% with local agencies affiliated with the New York State Industries of the Disabled, spending over $1 million to increase employment among our local population living with a disability. And whereas Monroe County recognizes the independence and personal fulfillment that individuals experience when they have a good job is unmatched. And we will continue to make strides to support the employment of our residents with disabilities. Now, I, on behalf of Adam J. Bello, Monroe County Executive, do hereby recognize National Disability Employment Awareness Month in Monroe County, reaffirm our commitment to supporting employment opportunities for citizens with disabilities. So again, thank you guys. We will be presenting this to or handing this over to Acess VR. Again, thank you for your service and the work that you do. Without you, we would not be able to expand and employ those with disabilities in the way that we do. Okay, so I want to start by again introducing Jennifer Geiger, who is the business relations representative for Acess VR. Jennifer, in her role as business relations representative, she focuses on hiring opportunities for people with disabilities, provides businesses with a talent pool and information about hiring incentives and tax credit. She is also an ADA certified trainer, which she has been working with DE&I and educating us around ADA and disabilities. And some of the things she also does training on is awareness and etiquette, reasonable accommodations, and disability and disclosure. So again, Jen, thanks for being here today. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Kimbrel. We really appreciate in terms of Acess VR partnering with Monroe County. We've definitely made great strides and continue to move forward with those collaborations and partnerships, especially with the new established DEI department. So looking forward to more opportunities, including today. So as Dr. Kimbrel expressed, October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So each October, Acess VR has the opportunity to celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month, known as NDEM. And we really celebrate the work of all of our partners who join together to make the connections between businesses seeking qualified workers and workers who are individuals with disabilities. So based on the successes, Acess VR and our partners, we have been celebrating multiple events across New York State, even during the pandemic. So these celebrations have emphasized local businesses investing in their local human resources and providing the opportunity for skilled workers to contribute to their communities, also earn a living wage and have meaningful careers. So in 2021, some of the NDEM winners within Monroe County, we've recognized locally with Acess VR and the Rochester Area Employment Network. So some of those businesses include Continuum Global Services, Home Depot of Greece and Gates, Walmart, Maximus, EEP Quality Group, Dell's Deli, Treetown Cafe, Marshalls of Pittsford, Wegmans, Derek's Websites, and more. And Derek is actually an entrepreneur with a disability, so check out his website. Career Start, University of Rochester, Crickler Vending, Home Goods of Henrietta, and H&K Empire. So these are just a sample of the businesses that have won awards this year. 2 years ago, we did recognize Monroe County for their efforts to make a more inclusive work environment. Next slide, please. So people with disabilities are a significant source of untapped talent who can bring qualifications and skills to the workplace. Disability diversity increases equity and the return on investment. I have assisted Monroe County managers to hire candidates through Acess VR. People with disabilities are reliable employees and have an overall higher job retention rate. Studies have also shown that people with disabilities are more dependable and absent less days than people who are non-disabled. People with disabilities also enhance team creativity and innovation. If we find the right jobs for the right people, it can and will increase the bottom line of businesses. At work, it's what people can do, what matters. Being mindful about creating an inclusive environment. We want employees to feel that they can trust their supervisors so they feel comfortable discussing their needs and supports. Not all disabilities are visible. For example, anxiety, a learning disability, or diabetes. People can acquire a disability when we think of COVID and people developing secondary disabilities, or as we age, right? Statistically, we are more likely to acquire a disability. When we look at recruiting, hiring, and retaining, and also the importance of advancing workers with disabilities is good for business. Progressive employers everywhere are learning that businesses that are inclusive of people with disabilities, including veterans with disabilities, do benefit from a wider talent pool. They see skills and offer creative business solutions. They are also recognizing that disability diversity is an important way to tap into a growing market, since people with disabilities represent the third largest market segment in the US. So by proactively employing individuals with disabilities, businesses can gain a better understanding of how to meet the needs of this important and expanding customer base. Businesses like Microsoft have created a hiring program that recruits specifically for people with disabilities. When we look at diversity and inclusion at work, it drives equity. Next slide. So feel free to connect with myself. I'll include my direct email address in the chat. The Job Accommodation Network is another resource that can be helpful when looking at accommodations based on a specific disability. There's never a one size fits all, and sometimes when we're looking at accommodations, we have to be, flexible and try different things to really figure out what may work for a specific, person and their disability. Also the Northeast ADA Center, that is another resource that can be helpful in terms of exploring resources on accommodations and such. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. Those resources that you provided and that information that you provided is invaluable as we ensure that we are creating a welcoming and inclusive environment for those that may have disabilities. So, just as you said, it's very important that people feel comfortable with sharing their differences and their disabilities, because some things you just cannot see on people. So thank you so much for that. All right, so next I want to introduce our next speaker, Bonnie Smith, who is the Chief of Planning for our Office of Mental Health. Bonnie, thank you again for being here with us today. A little bit about Bonnie: she has a bachelor's in human development and a master's degree in social science. She is a member or was a member of AmeriCorps, and she was placed at an organization that works with and supports people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, known as Starbridge. Through Starbridge, she worked in direct care and management, as well as quality assurance. She has also worked with the Strong Center for Developmental Disabilities and working in pediatrics there through URMC. And now we are happy to have her here as the Chief of Planning. Welcome, Bonnie. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks so much, Dr. Kimbrel. And I also want to thank Ebony and Amber, who were super great in helping Jen and I get set up for this presentation. So the reason I wanted to talk to you today is to talk about how October 10th was Mental Health Awareness Day. And the thing that I want you to take away today, if nothing else, is that we all have mental health. And we all have challenges and good times, and that hope is there if you need it. Hope, support, and treatment, depending on what your needs are available in the Monroe County community if you need it. So if you take nothing else away, we all have mental health and all have varying ways that we can help with challenges. We'll have good and bad days. So that's where I want to start. Back to mental health awareness. Like I said, October 10th was World Mental Health Awareness Day, and that is through the World Health Organization. It did start in 1992, and it's really to raise awareness about mental health and to also mobilize efforts to reduce stigma against mental health, because no matter how much we talk about mental health in the community, there's a lot of, I don't know what to call it, like bad press that it gets, even though we all have it, even though we all have physical health too, it's put in a different box than physical health and seen as bad when you're having challenges with mental health. But everyone has challenges, as I'll talk about in just a few minutes with some statistics that I pulled up. And I think that it's important for us all to be as supportive as we can for ourselves and for other people during this time. So as I said, it started in 1992, and the first theme in 1994 was to improve the quality of mental health services throughout the world. It's been a long time, and we're still working on this. I know, all around the world. 2021's theme was mental health care for all. Let's make it a reality. And I hope that aspirational goal is really something that we can work towards in our world. I think the reason why the WHO, or the World Health Organization, wanted it to be about making mental health care accessible for everyone is because of COVID across the world, and seeing how much isolation and loneliness can cause people to be more prone to mental health challenges. And also, while it's not specifically, I just want to highlight, while it's not specifically highlighted in the World Health Organization's materials for their campaign for Mental Health Awareness Day, it's important to recognize that racism and inequities due to poverty bring more stress into people's lives and can cause people to be more prone to mental health challenges in their life. Not necessarily mental illness, but mental health challenges and more stress. None of us need more stress in our lives. So let's break that down. Okay, and the goal of the campaign, one last thing about Mental Health Awareness Day, is to make sure that people know that mental health can be improved and mental illness can be treated. It's important to empower people to take care of their own mental health, provide support to other people in the community. The green ribbon that's on this slide right here is the international symbol for mental health awareness. So then next slide. As was mentioned in the introduction, thank you, Dr. Kimbrel. I'm from the Monroe County Office of Mental Health, and our newish director earlier this year, Dr. April Aycock, sends her regards. She wasn't able to make it today, but she wanted to say hello to everyone. So if you're not familiar with the Office of Mental Health, I just wanted to give you a quick overview. We are part of Monroe County, and our Office of Mental Health our mission is we're committed to improving the health and quality of life of county residents who are affected by mental illness, developmental disabilities, alcohol, and other drugs and addiction, I would say. So we're separate. It's kind of like, we're kind of like middle management of the behavioral health world. We're separate from the statewide agencies and the federal agencies. And we're not quite providers in the community. We really oversee the 3 different systems for mental health, substance use, and developmental disabilities in the Monroe County area. So, but that means that we work together with statewide agencies and then providers at the local level to help people make sure they're getting their needs met in those 3 areas. And I know we're the Office of Mental Health, so you might be wondering, like, why are they overseeing substance use and developmental disabilities as well? Well, as part of mental hygiene law, to get into the specifics and the boring backstory, we are required, every county is required to have what's called a local governmental unit. And that local governmental unit oversees those three service systems: mental health, substance use, and developmental disabilities. And for Monroe County, Monroe County Office of Mental Health is that local governmental unit. So that is kind of our backstory. So we don't provide a lot of services, just a few different things: court-ordered type services, evaluations. The forensic intervention team, or FIT, is also under our umbrella. And we work really closely with the PIC team, person in crisis team, through the city. We collaborate very much with them. And so, yeah, that's the backstory of Monroe County Office of Mental Health. Clear as mud. Yay, thanks. So just to get back to mental health, I just wanted to say that mental health includes your emotional, psychological, and social well-being. So all of those three things are included in your mental health. And it's more important now, more than ever, with COVID-19 and all of the unrest in the community, to make sure that we're taking care of each other. Loneliness, isolation, and inequities have increased or have been brought into light by COVID-19. So mental well-being affects how we think, act, and feel. It affects how we think, act, and feel, and therefore it's an integral part of our being and is a form of diversity. How you think, act, and feel is really how you present in the world, and by denying how we present ourselves in the world, or saying that that's not right, or putting it in this box over here, like I had mentioned earlier, you're saying basically that part is bad, and it doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help yourself, but it doesn't help others. So mental illness, just want to bring up this point: mental illness is different than mental health. Although the terms are often used interchangeably, for mental health and mental illness are not the same thing. So a person can experience mental health and not be diagnosed with a mental illness, or a person can be diagnosed with a mental illness and have some really good days and not be experiencing poor mental health. Just in terms of numbers, like I mentioned earlier, according to the CDC, mental illnesses are amongst the most common mental health or common health conditions, not just mental health conditions, common health conditions in the United States. And according to the World Health Organization, close to 1 billion people in the world have a mental disorder, and anyone, anywhere can be affected. Also, according to the CDC, more than 50% of people in the US will be diagnosed with a mental illness or mental disorder at some point in their life. And that's 1 in 5 Americans will experience a mental illness in a given year. So it's very common. And likely you're with someone right now who's either experienced or they've experienced it, or they have a family member who has experienced it, or they maybe are experiencing it now or in the past. So it's important to take into account that people need compassion. In terms of work, I was looking up statistics around this, and according to the World Health Organization, the lost productivity resulting from depression and anxiety, and those are the two main most common mental disorders, cost the global economy $1 trillion each year. So in lost productivity and not being able to support your workers, you're losing money. If you don't accept people into the organization with mental health challenges or disabilities, like Jen was talking about earlier, you're losing perspectives, valuable perspectives that could bring such richness into your organization. As far as Monroe County goes, we had just last year in the public mental health system, so people primarily who are getting Medicaid, but also people with insurance, A lot of our local organizations are included in this. 40,000 people who used mental health services in 2020. And that doesn't count private therapists or the online assistants. We're seeing a lot of these other type of apps, like, I don't want to mention them, but you probably hear commercials for them and stuff. And, you know, however, mental health care is becoming more acceptable and it's more flexible than ever to find resources to be able to meet your needs in terms of mental health. So 40,000 people we counted in Monroe County had used services, but it's likely that it's a way undercount. So poor mental health, back to the slides, poor mental health is associated with the increased risk of physical health problems like diabetes, heart disease, and stroke, okay? So another reason why it's important to take care of yourself mentally so that you can be healthy physically. Other reasons for mental health, there's no one single cause. I'm sure if you've heard of adverse childhood experiences or adverse life experiences, things like trauma and history of abuse, physical abuse, witnessing violence, that type of thing can cause issues for people as they grow up, physical issues and mental health challenges. Experiences related to other ongoing chronic medical conditions like cancer and diabetes, biological factors, such as chemical imbalances in the brain. That's often with depression, you see that doctors are giving medication to correct a chemical imbalance, and people see it as different than diabetes, which is also correcting a chemical imbalance. So very interesting to me. And it's really not much different. It's just correcting something that your body is not making, a particular chemical. Use of alcohol and drugs can cause mental health challenges and having feelings of loneliness and isolation. So it can affect work, and work can affect it. And this time of year can be particularly difficult for some workers because of less light. If people are affected by seasonal affective disorder, a part of depression or a type of depression. And I think that it makes it really hard to get out of bed, and it makes it really hard to get work done, and maybe hard to concentrate sometimes. So having compassion for that and really understanding what helps your workers feel the most cared about and wrapped around, and they're able to do their work the best that they can is really important. Some things that might help is communicating. If a person has a mental health challenge or mental illness, if you could help them communicate their needs and to set boundaries around when they might need to take breaks, or might need to turn off their phone and not take a 7 p.m. call, let's say, or something like that. They need to really set boundaries that can help mental challenges or mental health challenges. Having routine, incorporating exercise, breaks, and mindfulness. Deep breathing can help, especially, I just learned recently, your breath is the one thing that you can control. One thing that you can control that helps you calm down. So how you do that is you breathe in shorter, like for 4 beats, and you breathe out longer, like for 6 beats. And it helps, like if you do it several times in a row, it helps tap into your parasympathetic nervous system, your involuntary nervous system, and helps calm you down. Helps calm the fight, flight, and freeze response. I thought that was super cool. Making sure you're incorporating fun or relaxing activities to recharge your mental health batteries in the time that you're not working. Like Jen mentioned earlier, if you also need accommodations for your work, that one website that she's had on there, the Job Accommodation Network, dan.org, is really helpful. It talks about how you can get some accommodations for mental health challenges in addition to developmental disabilities and other types of disabilities. So some examples of that are leave and telework and reassignment and stress reduction. And it really depends on what your needs are as a worker. So next slide are some resources from us. not just by us, but I wanted to highlight that there's a New York Project Hope. You can call a number associated with it. If you go on this website, newyorkprojecthope.org, there's the ability to reach out to them. And really, it started during COVID, but I'm sure people are calling them about all sorts of different things. So, and COVID has touched so many different areas of our lives. So reach out to them if you need them. The tip sheets that are listed there on the website from the WHO, it's from their Mental Health Awareness Day campaign. There's lots of information on the CDC's website. And then we have some crisis cards that we made recently. Maybe I can get these out to somebody. So there's the links that are on the bottom there, the links to the crisis services. But then we also have these cards that we made that people can hand out, and it's in English and Spanish on the other side, and it pulls up an English list and a Spanish list of all the crisis services in our community. And we know that the service system is really complicated, but this is our first attempt at crisis services, and then we're developing another list for all the services. It's just taking a really long time because we have a lot of services in our community. Figuring out how to access them is the challenge, and so that's what we're really working. Yeah, so we can send out some cards to people if they're interested. I can put my name in the chat, or my email in the chat, and I can follow up with you. We just have some outreach workers that are coming on board here to get information from the community to us, and for us to get information about what's going on in the community, in the mental health service world to other people. So we're trying to make it less complicated in the community. So, again, there's hope for mental health challenges. There's hope for mental illness, and for developmental disabilities. There's always solutions, and for substance use, there's also hope and solutions. So that's what we want you to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie, for sharing some great information and resources throughout the community. Also, thank you, Jen, as well, for sharing some information. And I just want to thank both of you ladies for taking the time to meet with us. The chat is open for questions, but I had a few questions for both of you as it pertains to disability employment, as well as mental health. So, Jen, can an employer ask an employee if they need an accommodation, like if the employee hasn't come and disclosed that they have a disability? Is that something, if the employer suspects that, they may need some assistance, can they do so?
So in terms of the ADA, someone can't just say, do you have a disability? But I think, earlier when I presented and said, it's helpful when supervisors, managers really create a trusting environment. So that way a staff employee would feel comfortable maybe going to their supervisor or HR to express any accommodations. I know sometimes it may even be helpful just to, if like a manager just sends out information of like resources to everybody, right? Because you never know, when someone could be impacted, a family member. So sometimes even just throwing out general information, whether it's, Acess VR, OMH, other resources to all staff, I think that can be helpful. And then that way that employee knows that their employer is supportive. And then they may, sort of come forward and have a conversation about looking at accommodations or other supports that person may need.
Okay, great. So Bonnie, what are some signs that someone may be struggling with mental health? Like, what would you say to look out for if someone doesn't disclose that they're going through something?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think it really varies per person, but some things that you could look out for are difficulty concentrating, maybe being tired, more tired than usual, or being more energetic than usual. Sometimes with bipolar disorder, you see both sides, being really, really energetic sometimes and being really kind of really low energy some other times. Having challenges with anger or emotions generally can be challenging. Being more tired than usual, like I said, having fatigue, difficulty managing their time when it wasn't maybe a challenge as much before, and eating more or less than normal, or just anything that's more or less than their normal way of being, I would say. And asking them if they want to talk about it, knowing what your resources are around EAP might be helpful for them too. The Employee Assistance Program.
Okay, thank you. So as an employee, how do you communicate your needs, concerning, a disability or mental health?
So I would indicate that, if someone wants to sort of start that interactive process, looking at disclosing, they can go to, a supervisor, manager, or HR. So if someone has a better relationship, with their supervisor, they may go to the supervisor over HR. And so that supervisor would need to, act on, having that conversation regarding any accommodations that the person may need. And it's not always the most expensive accommodation is the best. But again, it's having that interactive process because, sometimes the person knows, what works best for them. And, other supervisors and managers may not have disability experience. And so that's where that interactive process is helpful for both parties to talk.
Okay. And Bonnie, as it relates to mental health, how would you recommend someone communicating their needs?
I think just what Jen was saying, being more proactive about it though too, so that people know ahead of time. So don't let it get so bad that you're concerned, that you're worried that you're behind on last week's deadline and then ask for accommodations. That's not the way to do it. It's being proactive as much as you can, as much as you're comfortable to disclose, and getting the help that you need to do your job successfully. None of us want to hire someone and see them be unsuccessful. We all want to work together in the long run to make changes in the community and help other people.
Yeah, I think that's important for folks to voice what their needs are ahead of time, because again, going back to disabilities is not something that is always a physical one, so even if it takes you a little bit longer to process, things where if you don't communicate that, to your supervisor, they may think that, you're slacking off or whatever the case may be. So just really building that relationship so that you can share what it is your needs are, so that yourself and your supervisor could be able to work together to get the job done. So I think it's really important to advocate what your needs are. I know I'll share here at Monroe County with the ADA process, the way it works is, if when a employee determines that, they need additional help, the interactive process starts with them having a conversation, whether it's with their supervisor, it could be with HR, it could be with me, just saying that, hey, there's a need. Once I receive the information, what I'm looking for is, specifically, what do you need in order to be successful in a job? Is there anything specific as far as, additional time, working remotely? Is there special equipment? Usually I send out a form with listing all the things that, is needed. And like I said, is, typically, what is the disability? How does it inhibit you from performing your job, and what specifically do you need? So once I receive that information, it will come back and I will review it and then make a determination. Again, depending upon what the request is, some things are cut and dry, whereas if it's a piece of equipment, we can just simply, okay, this is something that's necessary, put the order in and that's not a problem. If it's something like remote learning, that's something that we have to have a little bit further conversations with, checking in with supervisors and with directors of the departments, just to see what the nature of the person's work is and if that's something that's feasible. So, ADA accommodation is going to look different for everyone. So I encourage folks, if you have some concerns, disabilities, please don't hesitate to reach out. I know sometimes, word goes through the grapevine like, oh, I know such and such, they got an accommodation in this department, but, I wasn't able to get an accommodation. We look at them as a case-by-case basis, and depending upon the needs of the department and the function of the individual's job, you may or may not, we may or may not be able to accommodate. But what we always try to do is come up with suggestions as to, hey, we may not be able to accommodate this, but what about that? Because we really want to work with folks to give them what exactly it is that, they need in order to be successful on the job. So, I encourage, people that if they, have concerns, please start with your supervisor, express what the need is. And if you don't feel comfortable, going to the supervisor, don't hesitate to reach out to myself. I'll have the contact information later on in a slide.
I have one question, if I can ask a question just before we go to our audience. And the question is about caretakers of those with disabilities or those that are experiencing mental health issues. What are some of the options or resources that are available, especially in the workplace, when you have to care for someone that is experiencing mental health or, or disability or mental health disability? What are some of the resources and things in place, or some of the things that, according to ADA, that these people can be supported through these life situations? Whomever can answer.
So as for a family member for an employee who may have a family member who is experiencing some trouble. So again, I think it goes back to having a conversation with the supervisor, just to let them know, what's going on. Depending upon the nature of the work, the supervisor may or may not be flexible. You do have FMLA. So, again, if you're needed to be in a home, you can always apply for FMLA and see if you're eligible in that aspect. But I would say the number one thing would be to, start with your supervisor first, because it's important to build those relationships, so that they're aware of what's going on, because no supervisor wants to hear on the back end that, their employee was struggling with something and they didn't have the opportunity to assist them. I'm a strong believer that every, supervisor wants to try to work, with their employees so that they can, get through this difficult time. And if they're not able to, provide additional resources such as FMLA or, maybe going out on a medical leave if need be. But that's what I would recommend, to start with the supervisor first. And then, if you don't get any results there, then reach out.
I definitely agree, in terms of, supervisors want to retain their workforce and want to see people succeed in work. And so when you have, those conversations and you kind of, everyone's working together, because the ultimate goal is, to be able to work successfully. And also too, in our, community, we really are, rich in resources too. And so, again, whether it's, connecting with EAP or supervisor, sorry, Bonnie, I'm going to throw you and I, out there as a resource too, because I know Bonnie and myself are, well connected with lots of community agencies. So even if it's not something, our agency could do specifically, we're connected and could direct you to, other community agencies that may be able to provide assistance with that need.
Okay. Thank you. Can I ask one more question, guys? The next question is around the trends that you guys have been seeing since COVID. So, as we know, COVID has presented a whole, and I think Bonnie said it, another set of issues or things have been exposed or things have developed as a result of COVID, and disabilities, mental health issues, and along those lines. What has been some of the trends that you guys have seen as we start to kind of come out almost, or COVID starts to become a little more normalized in our society? What are some of the trends that you guys have been seeing in regards to work, as it relates to mental health and disabilities after COVID?
In regards to general mental health trends, I would say we're still tabulating the numbers because it's still pretty fresh, but we were seeing a dip in use of services in the very beginning because people were so isolated and no one wanted to come to the hospital or go out into the community or couldn't go out into the community to see their normal providers. So utilization of services was way down, and we had no way of knowing whether people actually needed those services, but suspected very highly that they did. Drug overdoses have gone up. Fatal overdoses have gone up. We have seen in the children's realm, in the mental health children's realm, fewer referrals, but more severe referrals. So it's almost as if people were holding back and waiting, like they're almost at their wit's end, and trying to deal with it at home, and then all of a sudden they can't really take it anymore, and they need some more external help. And so by the time they reach out for help, it's in a really, really bad state. So that's what we're seeing so far coming out of it, but trends are still emerging as far as we are seeing. How about you, Jen?
Yeah, I would say, trends in terms of awareness, right? Because with this pandemic, it really brought more awareness of people with various disabilities, whether it's, mental health, physical, also just the numbers of people that have been impacted, by COVID. So maybe themselves personally or someone that they knew. So I think it sort of put different lenses on things that people may not have been impacted before. And so sometimes it's not until someone is impacted personally that, again, they have a different perspective on a disability. And so I think when people may have loved ones, that experience and still are, right? We have the long haulers, and there's more research coming out. I just saw something yesterday that I was reading, just talking about the long-term memory loss and the brain fog that people are experiencing, even if they had mild COVID symptoms, sort of that secondary disability. So I think some of the trends that we may see are more of the secondary disabilities that people have acquired, whether COVID diagnosis themselves, or like Bonnie touched upon throughout her whole presentation, how people were impacted at different levels just of mental health, right? It's like one day, people are at work, the next day people are home, dynamics. We know numbers of domestic violence increased during the pandemic, like Bonnie touched upon with overdoses. Just that overall social isolation, people having to be their kids' teachers overnight, and again, different variables impacted everybody, I think, in some way, shape, or form.
Okay, thank you. And I know that with school getting back in, we're starting to see some of those unintended consequences of we want to get back to normal so bad, but it just doesn't seem to be that easy. And, we see a lot of kids struggling, things I've been seeing on the news, and also hearing from my own kids' school around, it just not being that easy for us to just come back together and kind of pick up where we left off. It seems to be, something going on there, some mental health issues and, different things like that kind of come into play as we want to get back together, but it just doesn't seem that easy as we thought it would be. So.
Can
And
I tell you a
it's
funny
fairly new,
story?
as you guys said. The research isn't even out yet.
Yeah,
So.
I know. One thing that my kid's teacher told me on the funny side of things is that kids are just bursting out with things that they want to say because they were used to being muted last year. And so like a little something as little as that, like they can't just burst out with things to say. My daughter's in 4th grade, and so there's lots of 4th graders who are like, blah, all over the place. Right now.
Yeah, I need to be heard. Yeah, absolutely.
Ebony, I had a question actually. It was a piggyback question off of Dr. Kimbrel's first question about FMLA and things like that, that employees can utilize. But what about employees who have been here for less than a year and don't have access to FMLA, or who don't qualify for those services yet? Are they only, and I guess any of you can answer this, are they only allowed to utilize services that are available through the community as opposed to through their job, because they're still new within their job, especially with COVID and so many people losing jobs and getting new jobs? There's a lot of people who are new to different workforce places right now that don't have to be there a year or more to qualify for the services such as FMLA.
Yes. So yes, you do have EAP, which is a service that you can use. It doesn't matter, how long you've been on the job. I would strongly encourage folks to utilize EAP. We want to normalize, folks reaching out for help. As Bonnie shared, we all have mental health, and we all have different needs. So, if you're not able to get FMLA right now because you're not eligible for it, I would strongly recommend that folks reach out to EAP. They're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you have an emergency crisis, you can call the number, which is 475-0432, or their toll-free number, which is 1-888-764-3456. And their website as well, which is www.urmc.rochester.edu/EAP. So I would definitely recommend utilizing EAP.
And is that a resource? Does EAP, is there a limited time with the use of EAP? So is it only for the 3 therapy sessions or something of that nature? Does EAP, let's say someone needed to be carried, and I use that word loosely, for 3 months. How does EAP work as far as that is concerned? Like, is there a time limit, or is there like a usage limit? How does that work?
So yes, with EAP, I believe it's up to 3 sessions. After the 3rd session, they will try to connect you with the provider to establish long-term counseling or whatever services that you need. But through EAP, it's 3 services, 3 visits.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do we have any other questions from our audience? All right, Amber, can you go to the next slide? So I just want to thank, like I said, both of you, Jennifer and Bonnie, for your time, sharing all these great resources and, what it is that you do as it pertains to disability employment awareness, and Bonnie with mental health. We have folks right here in Monroe County that's doing the work, and you have a plethora of resources that we can reach out to. Amber and I will be following up, sending out a list of those resources because it was so many that we couldn't even share on a slide. So Monroe County is resource heavy. So we want to share that information with everyone. So stay tuned within the next day for that information to be coming out. So we want to hear from you, you all who are on the Zoom right now. What would you like to hear, from our office? What topics? We don't like to just come up with everything, especially with sending out the calendars. The whole purpose of sending out the DEI calendars is to let you know what's going on for that month. We do have hyperlinks that's included in there to take you to different pages so that you can get a better understanding of the cultural event or the awareness or celebration. So the whole purpose of us sending out those calendars is so that you can choose within your departments or within your work groups, what it is that you want to focus on within your department. And each month, just know that the DEI team, we're going to focus on at least one or two just to bring awareness. But we want to hear from you all. We want you to get engaged and share back out with us with what your department, what your team is doing, because it's a collaborative effort. It's not one department, going in to do everything across the board. We want to hear some of the awesome things that you're doing within your department, and some of the departments I've already visited, and they're doing some amazing things. And, stay tuned, because we're going to be highlighting some of those departments. Next month, our focus is going to be on veterans. And also National American Indian and Alaska Native American Heritage Month. So stay tuned for that. We'll have more information to follow and spotlight someone. Again, stay tuned. We want to highlight all the great things that you're doing as it pertains to DEI throughout Monroe County. So please feel free to share your stories, send in your suggestions to our email box, which is ncdei@monroecounty.gov. So we'll love to hear from you, and stay in touch. And thank you for everyone. If you don't have any more questions, stay tuned. And again, keep in mind, we are always thriving and striving to have a more diverse and inclusive work environment.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. To our guests, thank you again for sharing your expertise with us. And for the DE&I team, thank you again for making it happen. Bye, guys.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
You too.